Dear students, let us discuss the topic of exploring ecotourism in forestry. First, we will introduce the subjects, then the terminology and history, criteria for ecotourism, importance of ecotourism, and then principles of ecotourism, advantages and disadvantages of ecotourism, and natural resource management, and then scope of ecotourism in India and sustainable tourism, and then we will summarize the entire topic. Ecotourism has become one of the fastest sectors of tourism industry, growing annually by 10 to 15% worldwide. Ecotourism has been defined as the practice of low impact educational, ecologically and culturally sensitive travel that benefits local communities and host countries. It is a form of tourism involving visiting fragile, pristine and relatively undisturbed natural areas intended as a low impact and often small scale alternative to standard commercial tourism. Its purpose may be to educate the traveler, to provide funds for ecological conservation, to directly benefit the economic development and political empowerment of local communities, or to foster respect for different cultures and for human rights. Since the 1980s, ecotourism has been considered a critical endeavor by environmentalists so that future generations may experience destinations relatively untouched by human intervention. Generally, ecotourism deals with living parts of the natural environments. Ecotourism focuses on socially responsible travel, personal growth and environmental sustainability. Ecotourism typically involves travel to destinations where flora, fauna and cultural heritage are the primary attractions. Ecotourism is intended to offer tourists insight into the impact of human beings onto the environment and to foster greater appreciation of natural habitats. Terminology and history. Ecotourism is a late 20th century neologism compounded from eco and tourism according to Oxford English Dictionary. Ecotour was first recorded in 1973 and ecotourism after 1982. Ecotour means a tour or visit to an area of ecological interest, usually with an educational element. A similar tour or visit designed to have as little detrimental effect on the ecology and possible or undertaken with a specific aim of helping conservation efforts. Ecotourism means tourism to areas of ecological interest and threatened natural environments, especially to support conservation efforts and observe wildlife. Criteria for ecotourism. Ecotourism is a responsible tourism which conserves the environment and sustains the well-being of local people. Then builds environmental awareness. Then provides direct financial benefits for conservation. Then provides financial benefits and empowerment for local people. Then respects local culture. Then supports human rights and democratic movements such as conservation of biological diversity and cultural diversity through ecosystem protection, promotion of sustainable use of biodiversity by providing jobs to local populations, sharing of all socio-economic benefits with local communities and indigenous peoples by having their informed consent and participation in the management of ecotourism enterprises. Tourism to unspoiled natural resources with minimal impact on the environment being a primary concern. Minimization of tourism's own environmental impact, affordability and lack of waste in the form of luxury, local culture, flora and fauna being the main attractions. Local people benefit from this form of tourism economically, often more than mass tourism. The International Ecotourism Society defines ecotourism as responsible travel to natural areas that conserve the environment, sustain the well-being of the local people and involve interpretation and education. For many countries, ecotourism is not simply a marginal activity to finance protection of the environment, but is a major industry of the national economy. For example, in Costa Rica, Ecuador, Nepal, Kenya, Madagascar and territories such as Antarctica, ecotourism represents a significant portion of the gross domestic product and economic activity. Ecotourism is often misinterpreted as any form of tourism that involves nature. In reality, the latter activities often consist of placing a hotel in a splendid landscape to the detriment of the ecosystem. According to them, ecotourism must above all sensitize people to the beauty and the fragility of nature. They condemn some operators as greenwashing their operations, using the labels of green and eco-friendly while behaving in environmentally irresponsible ways. Although academics disagree about who can be classified as an eco-tourist and there is little statistical data, some estimate that more than 5 million eco-tourists, the majority of the eco-tourist population come from the United States with many others from Western Europe, Canada and Australia. Currently, there are various movers to create national and international ecotourism accreditation programs, although the process is also controversial. National ecotourism certification programs have been put in place in countries such as Costa Rica, Australia, Kenya, Estonia and Sweden. And importance of ecotourism. Ecotourism is a growing segment of the global tourism industry that is making significant positive contributions to the environmental, social, cultural and economic well-being of destinations and local communities around the world, offering market-linked long-term solutions. Ecotourism provides effective economic incentives for conserving and enhancing biocultural diversity and helps protect the natural and cultural heritage of our beautiful planet by increasing capacity building opportunities. Ecotourism is also an effective vehicle for empowering local communities around the world to fight against poverty and achieve sustainable development. And principles of ecotourism. Ecotourism is focused on uniting conservation, communities and sustainable travel. The major principles of ecotourism are focusing on pristine, unspoiled natural environments, minimize impact on environment, building environmental and cultural awareness and respect, then providing positive experience for both visitors and hosts, and providing direct financial benefits for conservation and providing financial benefits and empowerment for local people, then raise sensitivity to host countries' political, environmental and social climate. Advantages of ecotourism. Ecotourism is an opportunity to preserve ecosystems and biodiversity. It is also a chance to generate revenues to support research efforts. Ecotourism also helps to protect threatened wildlife and ensure that robust animal population remain that way. Ecotourism presents an environment friendly and potentially more sustainable alternative to extractive activities such as farming, logging, mining or harvesting of wildlife. Ecotourism provides chance for local people to escape from a cycle of poverty, and by sharing their knowledge of the local terrain and ecology with visitors to develop a stronger sense of community pride and a broader, more global perspective that recognizes the significance of biodiversity to all people. Business initiated through ecotourism ventures can become self-sufficient within a short span of time and can enhance the long-term economic prospects of a community. Foreign visitors are benefited as ecotourism provides an educational glimpse of a world on their own, often a world of striking natural beauty and rich cultural heritage. A more subtle benefit is the opportunity to engage in an international dialogue with people from different backgrounds. This cross-cultural exchange can form a healthy bridge between developed and developing nations of the world. Ecotourism can create jobs in remote areas that have benefited less from economic development programs that have more populous areas. Protected areas and nature conservation usually provide many benefits to society, including preservation of biodiversity and maintenance of watersheds. The benefits of ecotourism for indigenous communities include preservation of its culture and tradition, conservation of the natural environment and maintenance of social, cultural and religious values. In remote areas with limited development, ecotourism ventures can improve the quality of life, self-esteem and well-being of local and indigenous communities. Then we will discuss about the disadvantages of ecotourism. Direct environmental impacts. Ecotourism operations occasionally fail to live up to conservation ideas. It is sometimes overlooked that ecotourism is highly consumer oriented activities and that environmental conservation is a means to further economic growth. Although ecotourism is intended for small groups, even a modest increase in population, however temporary, puts extra pressure on local environment and necessitates the development of additional infrastructure and amenities. The construction of water treatment plants, sanitation facilities and lodges come with exploitation of non-renewable energy sources and utilization of already limited local resources. The conversion of natural land to such tourist infrastructure is implicated in deforestation and habitat deterioration of butterflies in Mexico and squirrel monkeys in Costa Rica. In other cases, the environment suffers because local communities are unable to meet the infrastructure demands of ecotourism. The lack of adequate sanitation facilities in East African parks results in the disposal of campsite sewage in rivers, contaminating the wildlife, livestock and people who draw drinking water from it. Aside from environmental degradation with a tourist infrastructure, population pressure from ecotourism also leaves behind garbage and pollution associated with Western lifestyle. Although ecotourists claim to educationally sophisticated and environmentally concerned, they rarely understand the ecological consequences of their visits and how these day-to-day activities append physical impacts on the environment. As one scientist observes, they rarely acknowledge how the meals they eat, the toilets they flush, the water they drink and so on are all part of broader regional economical and ecological systems. They are helping to reconfigure with their activities. Nor do ecotourists recognize the great consumption of non-renewable energy required to arrive at their destinations, which is typically more remote than conventional tourism destinations. For instance, an exotic journey to a place 10,000 kilometers away consumes about 700 liters of fuel per person. Ecotourism activities are in and out of themselves issues in environmental impacts because they may disturb flora and fauna. Ecotourists believe that because they are only taking pictures and leaving footprints, they keep ecotourism sites pristine. But even harmless sounding activities such as nature hikes can be ecologically destructive. In the Annapurna circuit in Nepal, ecotourists have worn down the marked trails and created alternate routes, contributing to soil impaction, erosion and plant damage. Where the activities involve wildlife viewing, it can scare away animals, disrupt them feeding and nesting sites or acclimate them to the presence of people. In Kenya, wildlife observers disruption drives cheetahs off their reserves, increasing the risk of inbreeding and further endangering the species. Ecotourism has become one of the fastest growing sectors of tourism industry, growing annually by 10 to 15% worldwide. One definition of ecotourism is the practice of low impact educational, ecologically and culturally sensitive trade that benefits local communities and host countries. Many of the ecotourism projects are not meeting these standards. Even some of the guidelines are being executed. The local communities are still facing other negative impacts. South Africa is one of the countries that are reaping significant economic benefits from ecotourism, but negative effects including forcing people to leave their homes, gross violations of fundamental rights and environmental hazards far outweigh the medium term economic benefits. A tremendous amount of money is being spent and human resources continue to be used for ecotourism despite unsuccessful outcomes. And even more money is put into public relation campaigns to dilute the effect of criticism. Ecotourism channels resources away from other projects that could contribute more sustainable and realistic solutions to pressing social and environmental problems. The money tourism can generate often ties parks and managements to ecotourism, but there is a tension in this relationship because ecotourism often causes conflict and changes in land use rights, fails to deliver promises of community level benefits, damages environments and has plenty of other social impacts. Indeed, many argue repeatedly that ecotourism is neither ecologically nor socially beneficial, yet it persists as a strategy for conservation and development. While several studies are being done on ways to improve the ecotourism structure, some argue that these examples provide a rationale for stopping it altogether. However, there are some positive examples, among them the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area and the Virunga National Park as judged by World Wildlife Fund. The ecotourism system exercises tremendous financial and political influence. The evidence above shows that a strong case exists for restraining such activities in certain locations. Funding could be used for field studies aimed at finding alternative solutions to tourism and the diverse problems Africa faces in result of urbanization, industrialization and the over exploitation of agriculture at the local level. Ecotourism has become a source of conflict over control of land, resources and tourism profits. In this case, ecotourism has harmed the environment and local people and has led to conflicts over profit distribution. In a perfect world, more effort would be made towards educating tourists of the environmental and social effects of their travels. Very few regulations or laws stand in place as boundaries for the investors in ecotourism. These should be implemented to prohibit the promotion of unsustainable ecotourism projects and materials which project false images of destinations, demeaning local and indigenous culture. Though conservation efforts in East Africa are indisputably serving the interests of tourism in the region, it is important to make the distinction between conservation acts and the tourism industry. Eastern Africa communities are not the only of developing regions to experience economic and social harms from conservation efforts. Conservation in the northwest Yunnan region of China has similarly brought drastic changes to traditional land use in the region. Prior to logging restrictions imposed by the Chinese government, the industry made up 80% of the region's revenue. Following a complete ban on commercial logging, the indigenous people of the Yunnan region now see little opportunity for economic development. Ecotourism may provide solutions to the economic hardships suffered from the loss of industry to conservation in the Yunnan in the same way that it may serve to remedy the difficulties faced by the Maasai. As stated, the ecotourism structure must be improved to direct more money into host communities by reducing leakages for the industry to be successful in alleviating poverty in developing regions, but it provides a promising opportunity. Natural resource management. Natural resource management can be utilized as a specialized tool for the development of ecotourism. There are several places throughout the world where the amount of natural resources are abundant, but with human encroachment and habitats, these resources are depleting. Without knowing the proper utilization of certain resources, they are destroyed and floral and faunal species are becoming extinct. Ecotourism programs can be introduced for the conservation of these resources. Several plans and proper management programs can be introduced so that these resources remain untouched. Several organizations, non-government organizations, scientists are working on this field. Natural resources of hill areas like Kursiang in West Bengal are plenty in number with various flora and fauna, but tourism for business purpose poisoned the situation. Researchers from Jadavpur University presently are working in this area for the development of ecotourism, which can be utilized as a tool for natural resource management. In Southeast Asia, government and non-governmental organizations are working together with academics and industry operators to spread the economic benefits of tourism into the camps and villages of the region. Recently formed alliance, the Southeast Asian Tourism Organization is bringing together these diverse players to allay resource management concern. A 2002 summit held in Quebec led to the 2008 Global Sustainable Tourism Criteria. a collaborative efforts between the UN Foundation and other advocacy groups. The criteria, which are voluntary, involve the following standards: effective sustainability planning, maximum social and economic benefits for local communities, minimum negative impacts on cultural heritage, and minimum negative impacts on the environment. Scope of ecotourism in India. The scope of ecotourism in India is very high because of the wide geographical area and biological diversity. The Government of India published the ecotourism guidelines and policies in 1998, which needs to be followed by the planners, tour operators, visitors and other agencies. Tenmala Ecotourism Project was the first planned ecotourism project in India in the state of Kerala, launched on July 1, 1998. It is strictly based on the principles of ecotourism. The Vaishno Devi Shrine in Jammu and Kashmir and Ajanta Ellora Caves in Maharashtra are other such places, where ecological preservation and local participation is the primary objective. Sustainable tourism. Sustainable tourism is the concept of visiting places as a tourist and trying to make only positive impact on the environment, society and economy. Tourism can involve primary transportation to the general location, local transportation, accommodation, entertainment, recreation, nourishment and shopping. It can be related to travel for leisure, business and visiting friends and relatives. Some countries have their own certification programs for ecotourism. Costa Rica, for example, runs the certification of sustainable tourism program, which is intended to balance the effect that the business has on local environment. The certification of sustainable tourism program focuses on companies' interaction with natural and cultural resources, the improvement of quality of life within the local communities and the economic contribution to other programs of national development. Certification uses rating system that categorizes a company based upon how sustainable its operations are. Certification of sustainable tourism evaluates the interaction between the company and the surrounding habitat, the management policy and the operating system within the company, how the company encourages its clients to become active contributors towards sustainable policies and the interaction between the company and the local communities or overall population. Based upon these criteria, the company is evaluated for the strength of sustainability. The measurement index goes from 0 to 5, with 0 being the worst and 5 being the best. An environmental protection policy must address the issue of ecotourism removed from the cause and effect of their actions on the environment. More initiatives should be carried out to improve the awareness, sensitize them to environmental issues and care about the places they visit. To summarize ecotourism, it can be summarized that ecotourism is a form of tourism that involves visiting the natural areas in the remote wilderness or rural environments. It lays emphasis on environmental conservation and preservation of biological diversity and cultural diversity by providing jobs to local populations. Ecotourism promotes economic growth while conserving the environment of an area by preserving the ecosystem and the biodiversity. It promotes a spirit of community participation and environmental awareness and social sensitivity. Thus, ecotourism is inevitable to achieve the goal of sustainable development. Thank you.